Welcome to the Compassion Podcast, brought to you by the Global Compassion Coalition. In today's episode, Dr. Jud Brewer, New York Times bestselling author and thought leader in the field of habit change, shares the practice of cultivating curiosity for others. If we are to overcome the sense of division that grips many societies today, we have to generate a sense of real understanding with each other. That starts with curiosity, asking questions, developing empathy, and walking in one another's shoes. This practice will help you to harness your curiosity to gain a deeper appreciation and greater knowledge of the world and the people around you. And now I'll hand it over to Dr. Jud Brewer.
Just by way of introducing this practice, I just want to give a little bit of background where maybe frame a little bit of how curiosity can actually be a superpower. And what I mean by that is that, let me start by saying there are two types of curiosity, and it's important to start there. And if you didn't know there were two types of curiosity and are curious, but don't know the answer, you're actually already demonstrating one of the types of curiosity, which is called deprivation curiosity. When we're deprived of information, when we don't have information, deprivation curiosity kicks in and says, go get information. It's kind of like when we're hungry and our stomach rumbles, this dopamine signal in our brain says, go get some food, and we go get some food. In the same way, information is like food for our brain. It helps us survive. And it's been shown that dopamine actually fires in similar manners when we don't have information as to when we don't have food. And what they share, and probably a place for all of us to start with this practice, is just to notice what it feels like not to have a piece of information. So you can really feel into that experience of deprivation curiosity. In fact, just to make sure we're on the same page, for anybody that's interested, I'd love to hear if you feel into your direct experience of deprivation curiosity. So for example, not knowing what the other type of curiosity is, feel into that experience, and don't cheat by quickly looking it up on GPT-4 or something like that. Feel into your direct experience, and then just put a word or a phrase in the chat as to what it feels like not to know a piece of information. All right, so Anna, to kick things off, anxious, leaning in, tingling, uncertainty, uneasy, unsettling, frustrating, hungry, irritating, insecurity, worry. Great. Twitchy, reaching. All right, so these are great descriptors of what deprivation curiosity does, which is it urges us into action. And as some of these descriptors point to, reaching, missing out, craving for more. That's what dopamine does. It's a motivation molecule, and it says, go get something. So when we're hungry, it says, go get some food. When we're lacking information, when we're missing out, as somebody put it, then we have that urge to go and get something. Okay, so now let me ask you, well, let's put it this way. So keep this in mind, and keep in mind what it feels like to be deprived of information. Now I'm going to give you that piece of information. The other type of curiosity is called interest curiosity. And interest curiosity is different than deprivation curiosity in the sense that we're not deprived of anything in particular. We're just interested. I think of it as the joy of discovery. So when we're going along learning something, for example, or just out for a walk, maybe outside, we're just curious, like, oh, what does this bark on this tree look like? Oh, what does this pattern on this leaf look like? We're not particularly trying to find some specific piece of information. We're just curious. So maybe you can feel into, or even look around what your surroundings. There's a patterned carpet in front of me. And so I'm just going to look at this and just get curious. Oh, what does that pattern look like? So if you can feel into interest curiosity, I'd love for you to put into the chat what that feels like. Wonder and awe, joy, soft opening, spaciousness, open and expansive, joyous. Yes, oi. Inspiring, wonder, there's a smile, happiness, giddy, interesting. Okay, so so thank you all for responding. Can you notice a difference between these two types of curiosity in your felt experience? So now I'm going to ask you one more question. If you had to put into one of two buckets these different types of curiosity, which curiosity feels more closed and which one feels more open? So let's start with which one feels more closed. Is it deprivation curiosity or interest curiosity for you in your own experience? So which one feels closed? Okay. Getting a consensus here pretty quickly. The deprivation curiosity feels closed. Okay. All right. And then by extension, does interest curiosity feel more open? You don't even necessarily need to put it in the chat. I think everybody's got the idea. All right. So if deprivation curiosity feels more closed down and contracted, it actually is meant that way because it says, go get this information. We're focused on getting something. Interest curiosity, on the other hand, just going to scroll back up to how people describe this, fills me up, interesting, giddy, puzzling, happiness, presence, smile, wonder. We're more open. Oh, we're looking around. We're taking in information. So notice the difference between missing a piece of information and just being in the mode of discovery. Okay, so that's the first step in actually cultivating this practice of curiosity. Now, why focus on curiosity? Well, there are many reasons. So one is that curiosity helps us open to our experience. And I liken this to there's a mode of research. There was a bit of research led by Carol Dweck, who's a researcher at Stanford, who wrote about, she researched education settings. And what she found was that she described fixed versus growth mindsets. With a fixed mindset, we're more closed and contracted. We're fixed on something. Just like with deprivation curiosity, we're fixed on getting the answer to a question that we don't know the answer to. With growth mindset, we're more open to exploration and learning, and we're actually open to what's happening. So you can imagine what mindfulness practices tend to support, which type of curiosity. It's that interest curiosity. In Zen, they talk about not knowing, the don't know mind. In Korean Zen, the beginner's mind, that was popularized by the late Thich Nhat Hanh and others. And it's really about not coming into a situation with a preconceived notion, prejudging things. I'm sure none of us would want to be prejudged just by what we look like or how we dress or other surface characteristics of us. We'd prefer people to be interested in who we are. And in the same way, this is a wonderful way to explore our own experience and our own minds. When we have a fixed mindset, when we are just focused like this is who I am, we tend not to be open to change. And we also tend not to be open to seeing how things actually are. We see the world through what are described as subjective bias glasses. We're preconditioned to seeing the world in certain ways. Now, our minds are set up this way to help us survive. It's actually an efficiency mechanism so that when we learn, oh, that's a cat, for example, and we see another cat, we don't have to go through the whole learning process. Oh, is this a dangerous animal? Or is this an animal at all? What is this furry thing? We can just say, oh, the cat, and it seems to act the same way as cats have previously. And so we can kind of put it into a category, and it helps us not use a lot of cognitive resources to have to relearn what cats are. So in some ways, this subjective bias is helpful. Yet in other ways, this subjective bias can get in our way and actually cause a lot of suffering. I won't go into all of the background here, but basically, the Buddhist psychology describes a process called dependent origination, which was probably the first description of what in modern day neuroscience we call positive and negative reinforcement. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that what was suggested was that the first link in these 12 steps of dependent origination is described as ignorance. And in modern day, this is really parallel, or if not identical, to what is described as subjective bias. When we think the world is going to be a certain way, we're going to act a certain way, and that can cause suffering. Now, certainly we see this, unfortunately, way too much in public. When, for example, when somebody jumps to a conclusion based on another person's skin color or how they look or how they behave or even how old they might look. So we see a lot of subjective bias that causes suffering in everyday lives. And we can see how if we can step back, notice those biases, we can step back and not act them out. We can also learn to recognize them earlier in the process and also learn to unwind those biases. The same is also true for our internal selves. How many of you can relate to this voice in your head that kind of judges you? It says, oh, you're not good enough. You don't look good enough. You're not smart enough. You can't do this, this, and that. Think of it as Judgy McJudgerson. It's, for some of us, it's just constantly chatting away in our heads. Well, does that cause peace or suffering? Right. And so here we can see how our own subjective, our internal subjective bias classes can also get in the way. So how can we actually work with the subjective bias? Well, this isn't about getting a certain piece of information. This isn't about deprivation curiosity. This is about being interested and seeing the world as it truly is. That's why I think of curiosity as a superpower. So with all of that in mind, I thought we could go through a relatively brief practice together to really explore interest curiosity in particular. And it's helpful to contrast it to deprivation curiosity like we already have, so we can really zoom in on what interest curiosity feels like in our direct experience. So you don't have to be in any particular special meditation pose or posture or any particular place to practice being curious. What we can do is kind of start with noticing where we might be getting caught up in our own subjective bias. I think of these as habit loops. We get in the habit of self. Oh, I am this. I am not that. I am whatever. And the tone of voice that tends to come along with this is kind of an, oh, like, oh, this is going to happen again, or, oh, this is the way I am. So as a way to feel into that, see if you can just think back to a time recently, maybe when you've judged yourself, when somebody else has judged you, or when you've had a thought like, oh, this is the way it's going to be. For those of us that have experience with anxiety, which is many of us, and I've certainly had anxiety running all the way to panic attacks, you can also look to see what that experience feels like when you start to worry about something. And I think some folks even mentioned in the chat with deprivation curiosity that it can feel like worry. So just take a moment to feel into that experience. Judgment, worry, you're even feeling anxiety, and see if there's a tone of voice in your head that goes, oh no, oh no. See if you can just get familiar with that, oh no. See what it feels like in your body. And the first part of this practice is to see how you relate to that, oh no. There are often two ways that we relate to it. So see what is your experience, if it's one of these or if it's something else. One of the common ways that we relate to the oh no is that because it's unpleasant, we tend to push it away. That's how our brains work. It's called negative reinforcement, meaning if there's something unpleasant, we try to get away from it. So see if there's like a double oh no. There's the oh no, and then there's the oh no, here's my oh no, where we kind of resist our experience. So see if that's your experience. Do you resist oh no? And if that's not your experience, see if it is very familiar, like, oh yeah, this is who I am. The oh no, oh yeah, that's me. And so it can be so familiar that it just feels comfortable. We have we developed an app called Unwinding Anxiety, and an early pilot tester wrote me an email saying, I feel like this anxiety is deeply etched in my bones. That's how identified this person was with their anxiety. That, oh no, felt like that was who they were. So those tend to be the two main flavors of how we relate to the oh no. Oh no, here's the oh no again. And oh no, is it going to last all day? Or, oh, yep, this is who I am. So now let's see if we can get curious. What does that oh no actually feel like? What does it feel like in our experience? And are there thoughts that arise when we just hold that feeling of oh no in a wide open, curious awareness? What does it feel like? So we can ask simple questions like, where do I feel it in my body? What does oh no feel like? And we can bring in, oh. So see if you can play with a flavor instead of oh no. Bring in that flavor of interest. For some people, it's, what does this feel like? As they explore their experience. For other people, it's, oh. As we flip that, oh no, to, oh, what is this? Going from, oh no, this is what is happening, to, oh, what is this? See if you can just bring that open and expansive, curious awareness to your direct experience. And anytime a thought arises, get curious. Oh, what's this thought? See if you run after it or you try to push it away. Oh, I'm running after this thought. I'm getting on the thought train. Or, oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm pushing this away. What's it like simply to hold that thought in a curious awareness? Oh. If there's a body sensation, is there an automatic, oh no, this doesn't feel good? And we flip that. Oh, what does this feel like? And get really curious. What are the sensations? Do they change over time? And if you notice that your mind is wandering, oh, where's my mind running off to? What's it like to bring that curious awareness to this direct experience? Now we'll finish this brief practice with one more kind of touch or one more mode of exploring curiosity. This has to do with our eyes. Our eyes are really good at holding what's described as somatic memory, meaning it's just a fancy term for how we associate physical sensations and physical postures with certain emotions. As an example, maybe we can do this together. If you put your shoulders up really high toward your ears, does that feel relaxing? No. You just let that out, let a breath come and let those shoulders shake out. Which one feels more relaxing, right? So we tend to associate tension with stress, for example. And we tend to associate just the body in a relaxed posture with a lack of stress. That's an example, simple example of somatic memory. Now, our eyes are really good at holding a lot of types of somatic memory. For example, when we are in deprivation curiosity, or which is also in parallel with being frustrated or angry, what do our eyes naturally do? Do they get wide or do they get narrow? Really angry. You can actually play with this. Open your eyes really wide and try to think of a time when you were angry. Can you get angry when your eyes are really open wide? Oh, I'm really angry. You know, it's hard to do. Because when we're angry or frustrated or in deprivation curiosity, we're not open to our experience. We're focused on getting something, changing the situation. What about interest curiosity? Do we tend to have our eyes narrowed or do we have them wide open? So when you explore just that direct experience of, or oh, what do your eyes naturally do? Oh, what's this? This is actually, it's been shown even in scientific studies, when we open our eyes wide, we're able to take in more information. That's what eyes being wide is for. And so it's been shown, we can do our own natural experiment, N of one experiment, where we can explore, oh, when I'm curious, do my eyes naturally open wide? So the reason I'm pointing out this somatic memory bit is that it's actually a little hack that we can use to help us drop into this wide open interest curiosity. So if we're feeling frustrated or angry, or we're having trouble kind of awakening curiosity, we can simply open our eyes really wide. And that signals to our brain, oh, this is supposed to be in curiosity mode, and naturally can pop us, or at least move us more in the direction of being curious. So that's a little trick you can kind of bring to bear, a little tip that you can bring when you're struggling with curiosity. Or when people ask me, oh, I'm having trouble, being curious. In that moment, we can explore together. Oh, what's it feel like not to be curious? And we can awaken that natural curiosity. So hopefully you got a chance to see from this very brief practice what interest curiosity feels like. I'm guessing we all know what it feels like, but what it feels like to directly support it and foster it. And also how it contrasts with deprivation curiosity. I won't ask you to put it in the chat, but you can ask yourself which of these types of curiosity feels better, which one is more rewarding. It may seem obvious or a no-brainer, but I think I can infer from your descriptions from the chat, interest curiosity is joyous, it's inspiring, it's wonder, as somebody put. Whereas deprivation curiosity tends to be associated with things that are unpleasant, right? Chase the red ball, missing out, not safe, reaching, twitchy, craving for more. And that is promising because that means our brains are naturally wired to prefer interest curiosity over deprivation curiosity. It doesn't mean that deprivation curiosity is a bad thing. No, in fact, it's very helpful for survival. If we hear a rustling in the bushes, we need to figure out what that is. Is that danger or is it not danger? Yet when we aren't in danger, when we aren't in immediate danger, then interest curiosity can help us live a richer life, which can help us with everything from decreasing implicit bias to decreasing self-judgment to increasing our learning, whether it's about ourselves. Oh, my mind does this. I didn't notice that before. To increasing our ability to kind of see how the world works, to see clearly, which is, I think if I remember correctly, the term vipassana actually literally means to see clearly, where we take off those subjective bias classes. The last thing I'll mention is that curiosity is so important in the Buddhist psychology. It's actually one interpretation of, there are these factors called the 7 factors of awakening, or the 7 factors of enlightenment. That, if it's a factor of enlightenment, it seems like it's kind of important. And if you look at these factors of awakening, the first one is basically awareness or mindfulness. And the second one can be interpreted as interest or exploration or curiosity, right? Interest, having interest, being interested. And when we bring that awareness together with interest and we direct that toward our own experience, it helps us start to awaken, to see where we are causing ourselves suffering and where we are causing suffering for others. If we turn that interest toward that experience, oh, where's their suffering? And where's their freedom from suffering? This interest naturally becomes the superpower. It helps us to start to wake up, to see the way the world is. And it helps us to wake up, to see how we are caught in our own patterns, our own habit patterns that can lead to suffering, and how how the interest itself can help us step out of those habit patterns. As an example, my lab developed an app called Unwinding Anxiety, and we studied it to see how well it helped people with generalized anxiety disorder. And the key practice in that program is to help people awaken their natural capacity to be curious. When we did a randomized controlled trial, we actually got a 67% reduction in these clinically validated anxiety symptoms, as compared to about a 14% reduction in people in the control group who just got usual clinical care. And so it seems that, and it's not just interest, but that's kind of the curiosity is a key aspect of this, that it can be really, really helpful in even some of the most severe anxiety disorders. And we've had people come back and describe how they could develop the habit of being curious when they had a panic attack. Yes, I'll repeat that in case you missed that. People can report that they can develop the habit of being curious when they have a panic attack. So instead of that, oh no, and they freak out, and then they start worrying about having their next panic attack, they can go, oh, this is a panic attack. I'll give a personal example. This is a while ago now, when I was in residency, I started having my own panic attacks. And I'd been practicing mindfulness practice for about 9 years at that point, and was doing a lot of noting practice, this Burmese practice of noting my experience. And I wake up in the middle of the night with a full-blown panic attack, start noting, oh, feeling like I'm going to die. It's really true. You have thoughts of that you're going to die. That's what I had. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I would note that. Oh, can't breathe. I would note that I was sweating like crazy. I would note that my heart was beating really strongly and racing. I would just note those. Note. And then the panic attack, when it panic attack passed, of course, I was in residency as a psychiatrist, go through the diagnostic checklist and go check. Oh, I just had a panic attack. And the key there was that, oh, I just had a panic attack, as compared to, oh no, I just had a panic attack. Am I going to have another panic attack? Am I going to be able to be a psychiatrist if I have panic attacks? And instead of my mind racing off, worrying that I might have more panic attacks, which is how panic disorder develops. It's that worry of that next panic attack. It's not the panic attacks themselves, it's that worry. I could note that. I could get curious. And then what could I do after that? I could go back to sleep. And so instead of worrying, I would just fall back asleep. Now, sure, there's a confound in there of being sleep deprived as a resident, but let's just say that I could get back to sleep pretty easily. And each time that I'd had panic attacks subsequently, or even start to panic, I can notice it. And I can note that and get curious. Oh, here's panic. So it helps me work through panic attacks. It certainly helped folks in our Unwinding Anxiety program, where they develop that habit of being curious. And that curiosity becomes a superpower that helps them ride out these panic attacks and also not worry that they're going to have another one. So I know there's been a lot of information that I just put forward, as well as a practice that we've done together to start to awaken this natural capacity to be curious. So I'll just end with a quote, and then we'll open it up to questions and your own experience. I'd love to hear what it was like to be curious. So I love this quote. It's from James Stephens, who is an Irish author and poet, who said, "Curiosity will conquer fear even more than bravery will." So just take that in. Curiosity will conquer fear even more than bravery will. It was certainly the case for me. And I would invite all of us to explore it ourselves. Oh, can I foster the habit of being curious? And can it help me live my life in a different way, one that's more open to the world, one that's more compassionate, and one that is hopefully in the service of harmony with myself and with others, as compared to this closed down, contracted experience that tends not to be as harmonious. So I will stop there and would be happy to, maybe we could start with, if anybody would like to share their experience of what it feels like to be curious, or even do the simple eye exercise of, oh, what's it like to be curious? Would love to hear, and then we'll open it up to questions. So feel free to just unmute yourself. Any brave soul out there would like to share their experience?
I'd love to share.
Please.
So what I noticed was interesting about the first bringing up a worry and that oh no feeling. It almost brings upon that stress response, that fight, flight, freeze, where you want to get away from it, or you freeze in the fear of this worry, like what's going to happen. But as soon as I opened it up to curiosity, the stress response was almost stopped in its tracks. And that to me is like, that's a huge superpower. I see that as a huge benefit. So that's just a very short reflection, but just that sense of settling that happens when you say, oh, instead of, oh no, to a worry or a judgment or a fear you're having, and almost just calming you down in the moment. I was surprised by that. I wasn't expecting that. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a really nice description of it.
Jud, I'd be happy to share. This is Bonnie from the Yukon, and what I noticed, it was interesting. It was me that put reaching, and so what I noticed is when I got to the oh no, I went right to the deprivation. I was reaching for the shovel, like there was something, and I've been doing this with my compassion practice, realizing that there's this deep sense that there's something I should be doing and I'm not. And I loved what Christine said, is that, you know, I keep coming back to this stopping, because when I seem to step into the interest curiosity, I actually feel quite lost. But in my journaling, I've identified I'm lost, but I feel like I'm in a safe place. Like it's a very disorienting feeling. I'm lost, but I'm safe. So I kept sort of going, where am I? And then that would lead to who am I? And then that would go to where am I? And just letting myself bounce back and forth. And it's interesting. There's a sweet disorientation. It's not a frightening disorientation. So yeah, thank you for that.
Right. Well, thank you for that description. I love that. The sweet disorientation, if I'm hearing this correctly, of not knowing and being okay with not knowing. Yeah, thank you.
Hello. So similarly, I noticed that I went to feeling something I'm not often aware of. So sadness came up. And likewise, I think it was safe. There was room for that, as there often isn't. So that was a great discovery. Thank you.
I love that. Some safety in just having that space. Thank you. I see a real hand raised, but if you can hold it for 1 second, because I think Janice put her question in the chat. So let's start with that, and then we'll come back to Lily. Said, are some people not curious due to lack of dopamine, or is it something else? That's a great question.
Yeah.
So the good news is that we all have this capacity to be curious. And one of my working hypotheses is that society, at least Western society, I'll put it this way, it hasn't spotlighted curiosity as a superpower. So often, you know, there's this posturing around, oh, I've got to be in charge, or I have to be in the know, or I need to know the answer to things. Fortunately, we've seen in the last couple of years, people highlight the curiosity. It was even a cover of the Harvard Business Review on this journal that kind of highlighted curiosity in business and how important and helpful it can be. So my working hypothesis is that, in an attempt to be in control or be seen as knowledgeable or in control, we often try to diminish that not knowing capacity, which is ironically just gets in the way. So I don't think it's a lack of dopamine. I think it's a lack of society seeing how critical and important and helpful curiosity is. And that's also good news, because we can also, well, I'll speak from my own experience and just from the programs we've developed, it doesn't take that long for people to start to awaken it and see how powerful it is. And because it feels good, it becomes much easier to have it become this virtuous loop. So thank you for that question. And, it's not that some people have it and some don't. It's more a matter of how quickly can we cultivate it and see how great it feels when we are curious. I'll mention that, speaking of cats and curiosity, I have a very affectionate kitten. With curiosity, if we notice afterwards, what was it like when I was curious as compared to when I wasn't curious? That helps to reinforce it through positive reinforcement. When we notice how it helps a situation, when we're open to listening, for example, in a meeting with people or to a family member or a friend, as compared to jumping to a conclusion, we can see how helpful it is to be curious as compared to not. And if we can reflect on it afterwards, that actually helps reinforce it, because we're like, oh, that was helpful. Whether it was, from helping us with a panic attack or just helping us be open in a conversation with someone else. Okay, Lily, you had your hand up, please.
Yes, thank you. Two things quickly. I'm reading your book, and just the first two sections. I'm about to go to section 3, so I've been practicing. I want to thank you for writing it in a way that a person that has not gone to medical school or that kind of thing can understand. It's very, very understandable. And anyway, and the second thing is, what I've been working with is asking myself, the question, what are you telling me? In the curiosity part. But what I got when we just did our little exercise, which I really, really love, so I wrote it down, is the question is, what are you telling me that I am not listening to? So
I love that.
I put it together. It's like, it isn't just what are you telling me? It's what are you telling me that I am resisting so much that I'm not even going to listen to it.
Yeah. I love that. And that highlights, often we have, I think of it as meeting our needs as compared to feeding our wants. And so often, we'll ignore, and not listen to our intuition or our wise minds and bodies. So I love how you put that. What are you telling me that I'm not listening to? Because often we'll be running away from our experience or distracting ourselves. Which also brings forward a couple of my favorite quotes, which is, the only way out is through. I'm sure many folks have heard that one, where it's like, if we run from our experience, we're not actually going to learn from it and be able to listen to what are you telling me that I'm not listening to? So the only way out is through. And then another one attributed to the Stoics, or I think Marcus Aurelius specifically, sorry to keep quoting dead white men, but it was basically the only way out is through, or the obstacle becomes the way. What stands in the way becomes the way, or something like that. And when we bring in curiosity as our superpower, it helps us say, oh, what are you telling me that I'm not listening to, as compared to, oh, I'm going to run away and not listen. So I love how you bring that forward. And thank you for the kind words about I'm guessing it's the Unwinding Anxiety book. I
Please
just
read
mentioned that because I wrote two and I'm not sure which one
it's
you
the
were.
one that's got 3 sections, because it's maybe all of them do, but anyway, it's
No, that's Unwinding Anxiety.
Unwinding. Yeah. It's always fun to know you're reading a book that you love, but you can't remember the name of it. Maybe
it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't even matter as long as you know where the book is, so you can keep reading.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll finish up.
I'd like to ask something or share about the word curious or curiosity. When I first heard it from you, I kind of rejected the word. I couldn't relate to the word. I don't know why. It was quite a shock to me because I don't know, maybe I feel jaded. I don't know. But somehow the word curious felt like, I don't even know what to say, like a joke or not serious. It's a weird thing to say, but
yeah.
I mean, it's more like I would replace it with reflection or examination or a desire to want to know or examine or something like that. But I couldn't relate to the word curious. I found it too lighthearted, which is a weird thing to say, but that's all I wanted to share.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm guessing you're speaking for other people as well. And let me ask you now, after going through the practice, is lighthearted a problem?
Listen, I live in Jerusalem in Israel, so lighthearted is not what's been going on here for 40 years that I've been here. So it might be my life experience is not, and then I grew up in South Africa, Jewish. So I'm just saying maybe curiosity wasn't like one of my main tools in the box. It was more, anxiety or whatever. So I'm just saying that I find it maybe I feel too jaded to use the word curious, which is a bit sad because maybe I wasn't encouraged to be curious as a child. It's just a life experience. I mean, I've replaced it with other words, again, as I said, examining, reflecting, etc. But curious to me doesn't sit well. Just anyway, that's all I'm sharing.
Well, you're highlighting something really important, which is our life experience can really affect how we interact with the world. And so, maybe something to explore is when you reflect, for example, on your own experience, what's it like to bring in some of that curiosity, even if it feels a little bit lighter. At first, it can feel uncomfortable just because it's different. So anything that's different is a signal to our brain that says, this is different. I need to figure out if it's different or dangerous. That's what our brains do, right? So anything that's different is going to feel uncomfortable at first until we get used to it. So when you bring in a little bit of curiosity and feel a little bit of opening, you can then get curious about that. Oh, is this different or is it dangerous? To help open and be with that experience of curiosity, of the lightness of it, and to see that, curiosity itself tends not to be a dangerous thing. It helps us actually see more, and then see if you get more familiar with it so that it becomes more comfortable, and then something that's easier to access as part of your experience. And again, I don't want to presume your experience, like you said, growing up or living in Jerusalem for a long time, there's a lot going on in Israel. My wife was just there for a week. There's a lot going on. And so needing to be, I won't even, there can be places where we have to be vigilant, for example, and that can kind of become the habit, the societal habit. And at the same time, we can explore what it's like to bring kindness and curiosity in those moments as well. Just something to explore. So thank you for bringing that forward. Yes. I think we have time for maybe one more. And I see Stephen's got 2 hands up, a virtual and a real one. Please, Stephen.
Hi, thank you. Marcia, I wouldn't claim to have anything like your life experience, but one of the occupational risks of getting older and losing one's illusions is a certain sense of disenchantment. And my natural cynicism and pessimism has had lots of opportunities to blossom over recent years. And earlier this year, I was just getting really exasperated and fed up and bored with my own reactions to things, seeing the black side of everything. And I noticed how it had closed me down, and I just wasn't enjoying it. Mercifully, my partner, I share my partner's addiction to comedy. To twist Kennedy's words, she will carry any burden as long as you can laugh at it. And we'd been rewatching Seinfeld series after series, and I noticed that Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who plays the character Elaine Benez, often is just in about every episode, is staring at somebody with this expression which mixes delight and incredulity.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's not always sympathetic by any means. It's like sometimes, I can't believe you're being an idiot like this.
Yeah.
But I already knew about what we've been talking about here, that the physical expression of emotion is a two-way street. So, you have a feeling and it expresses in my face. I put an expression on my face and it changes the way I feel. So I started copying Elaine from Seinfeld, gaping at people in wonder and awe. And to my relief, it opened up for me some space in which, even when I thought they were still being idiots, I could listen to them with some curiosity, and there was a space for being playful with it. So thank you for reminding us of this two-way street, sort of face to heart to face.
Well, and thank you for the real world example of using it. That, I think she must have eyes of unusual size. Like they seem to just like pop out of her head. So I think that's such a beautiful example, and something that it's easy for any of us to, find a YouTube clip of of Elaine from Seinfeld doing something like as a way to help us wake up to that capacity. So thank you for that. Well, on that note, playing off of the mission impossible, for all of us, our mission, should we choose to accept it, is see how much we can have curiosity lead our lives, rather than being led by the, how much can we open to the, and how much can that open us to kindness, to compassion for ourselves, for others, and for the world. So I'm going to give it back to Christine, and thank you again for inviting me to join you all today. Here's to being curious.
This podcast was brought to you by the Global Compassion Coalition. To access more content like this, as well as resources integrating compassion into your daily routine, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and visit our website at globalcompassioncoalition.org.